Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world with me, Deepika, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to soon reply to the motion of thanks on President's address in Indian Parliament. China hits back at Trump's tariffs with new taxes on American oil, gas and coal and tightens restrictions on critical mineral exports. And the rebel coalition, including M23 in eastern Congo, announces a humanitarian ceasefire just days before a critical meeting between the leaders of Congo and Rwanda. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will respond to the motion of thanks to the President's address in the Lok Sabha or the lower house of the Parliament in a short while from now. Earlier in the day, the Lok Sabha resumed discussions on the motion of thanks on the President's address to the joint sitting of both the houses of the Parliament. Participating in the discussion, Samajwadi Party's MP Akhilesh Yadav said that the country, with its vast potential and resources, has not been able to exploit its true manufacturing potential under the current regime. Whereas participating in the discussion, All India Trinamool Congress leader MP Saugata Rai said that the country is lagging behind several countries in terms of manufacturing and there was a need to take stringent measures to overcome this deficiency. BJP MP Sanjay Jaiswal said that while the discussion has to focus on what the President of India has said during her speech, most of the opposition members are talking about issues irrelevant to the topic. He further highlighted various achievements of the government. Moving to the legislative businesses transacted in Rajya Sabha, the upper house of India's Parliament, the House also resumed the discussion on the motion of thanks on the President's address to the joint houses of the Parliament. Participating in the discussion, a senior leader of the BJP, Bansi Lal Gurjar, said that India is encouragingly moving forward on the path of development and prosperity under the Prime Minister's led government. The discussion is currently underway. Now, in response to US President's 10% tariff on Chinese imports, China's finance ministry on Tuesday announced a package of tariffs on US goods. Apart from expanding restrictions on it, Trump delayed the start of tariff on neighbors Mexico and Canada for a month on Monday, but China remained in the firing line for levies that are putting the global economy on edge. China has even opened up a probe against Google. Further details are in the next story. Take a look.
Last-minute deals that the Mexican and Canadian leaders struck with US President Donald Trump saved a potential face-off of tariffs between the neighbors. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau agreed to tighten border measures against the flow of migrants and the drug fentanyl into the United States.
We
reached an agreement. It is in the agreement we published to place more National Guard in the northern border in order to protect the border and prevent drug trafficking, especially fentanyl trafficking from Mexico to the US.
Trump declared rather triumphantly that Mexico has agreed to send 10,000 troops to the US-Mexico frontier. He added that Trudeau has agreed to deploy nearly 10,000 frontline officers at the border, list drug cartels as terrorists, appoint a fentanyl czar, and crack down on money laundering. But the face-off with China threatens to get ugly. China has slapped tariffs on US imports in a rapid response to new US duties on Chinese goods. Trump's additional 10% tariff across all Chinese imports into the US came into effect at 0501 GMT on Tuesday. Within minutes, China's finance ministry said it would impose levies of 15% for US coal and LNG and 10% for crude oil, farm equipment and some autos. The new tariffs on US exports will start on February 10th. Separately, China is imposing export controls on tungsten, tellurium, ruthenium, molybdenum and ruthenium-related items to safeguard national security interests. Canada, China and Mexico are the United States' three biggest trading partners. the markets may have heaved a little relief on account of easing of tensions in the Americas, but the China conundrum can still unnerve the traders. Trump's action may have left markets and traders on the edge in the past 24 to 48 hours, and now China's countermeasures have the ability to further rile the nervous markets. Bureau Report, DD India.
Meanwhile, on the immigration front, U.S. security forces stand guard near the border wall with Mexico as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visits the city. Hegseth was joined by the White House border czar, Tom Homan, and both the officials met with troops charged with the objective of achieving operational control of the border. The Pentagon chief's first trip to the southern border comes as Donald Trump declared a national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act on Saturday, citing the extraordinary threat from fentanyl and illegal immigration. On its part, Mexico has agreed to reinforce its northern border with 10,000 National Guard members to stem the flow of illegal migration and drugs.
Because of President Trump's deft ability to negotiate, we now have 10,000 Mexican troops that are going to be patrolling on the other side of the border, so there's cooperation with Mexico as well. Over time, when we're able to build the border wall as well as the President has said he will do and will do, operational control looks different than just constant manpower, but this is the phase that we're in right now.
Besides, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has reached a migration deal with El Salvador, agreeing to accept migrants of any nationality who are deported from the U.S. and keep them in its jail. Now, there is virtually no precedent in contemporary times for a democratic country to send its own citizens to foreign jails. But Rubio said President, who has launched a sweeping crackdown on crime that has won him popularity at home, offered to do just that in their meeting earlier in the day. Now, Rubio spelled out the three decisions taken during the meeting. Let's take a listen to them.
Presence of all of you to see the transformation of a society and of a nation that not too long ago faced great insecurity. But we've seen the transformation under the leadership of this administration here and President Bukele.
Now, the U.S. Agency for International Development headquarters was abruptly closed to staff on Monday, marking the latest development in a controversial takeover bid by billionaire Elon Musk, who has been appointed by U.S. President Donald Trump to lead a federal cost-cutting initiative. Here's more.
The U.S. government's giant humanitarian agency closed its headquarters to staff on Monday amid moves by Elon Musk to seize control. Workers at the U.S. Agency for International Development were told to stay out of its Washington office after its website went dark over the weekend, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio announcing Monday it would come under his control. The move sparked protests and vows from Democratic senators to block State Department nominee confirmations. Trump ordered a freeze on most U.S. foreign aid on January 20th, halting hundreds of life-saving aid programs worldwide. Billionaire Elon Musk has targeted USAID for closure. Trump considers merging USAID into the State Department, with Musk overseeing efficiency. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been appointed as USAID's acting director, says the agency needs State Department direction.
There are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. Their attitude is, we don't have to answer to you because we are independent, we answer to no one. Well, that's not true, and that will no longer be the case.
Elon Musk's attempted takeover of USAID has sparked intense controversy. Staffers were locked out of their computer systems and Democrats were denied entry into the headquarters. Around 50 demonstrators protested outside USAID headquarters on Monday.
Unelected shadow government is conducting a hostile takeover of the federal government. Last Friday, DOJ forcefully gained access to the Treasury Department's payment systems and to the most sensitive information of virtually every U.S. citizen.
Maybe you get paid, or maybe you don't, because now it appears that all of us work for Elon Musk. Elon just grabbed the controls of our whole payment system, demanding the power to turn it on for his friends or turn it off for anyone he doesn't like.
The South African born billionaire has taken control over the US Treasury's payment systems that manages trillions of dollars. He single-handedly announced the demise of the USAID humanitarian agency and helped drive out top officials. Trump sought to play down the issue on Monday.
Elon can't do and won't do anything without our approval, and we'll give him the approval where appropriate. Where not appropriate, we won't. But he reports in, and it's something that he feels very strongly about, and I'm impressed because he's running obviously a big company. It has nothing to do, if there's a conflict, that we won't let him get near it.
Critics have denounced Musk's actions as plain illegal, citing his lack of background checks and confirmation process. Democrats, who have been largely silent during Trump's first shock and awe 2 weeks in power, have now begun to mobilize against the latest Musk moves. Antara Sinha for DD India.
A trade war between the US and its neighbors, Canada and Mexico, appears to be averted for now, but the sell-off on Monday shows just how vulnerable the global economy may be. Joining us with more about the reaction in Europe is DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu in Berlin. Well, Chiponda, how prepared is the European Union for potential US tariffs?
Thanks for having me. Well, European leaders have said that they would retaliate if Trump were to impose tariffs on the bloc. Now, the EU is the US's fourth biggest trade partner, and US President Trump has been calling for the EU to buy more US goods. Now, at the end of 2023, the US goods trade deficit was 155.8 billion euros with the EU. Now, that's according to Eurostat data. But when it comes to services, the United States had a surplus of over $100 billion. Now, European leaders have been reportedly trying to prepare for any potential tariffs by drawing up lists of US products that they would target. But the real test will really be the EU's unity. Now, in the past, that has mainly depended on its two biggest economies, which are, of course, Germany and France. And right now, their political futures are uncertain. Later this month, Germans will be heading to the polls in an election that will determine the next government. And the French Prime Minister, meanwhile, may be facing a vote of confidence this week.
So, Chiponda, which industries in Europe would be most vulnerable to US tariffs?
Well, chemicals, vehicles, machinery, and other manufactured goods make up the bulk of EU exports to the US. And it is the auto industry that is the most vulnerable. We already saw that on Monday, even just with the threat of US tariffs against Canada and Mexico. Now, that's because European car makers have operations in both countries, which they use to manufacture cars for North America's biggest market, the United States. Now, sometimes car parts travel across the border several times during production, and tariffs would have, of course, cost the auto industry billions, especially in Mexico, where they do benefit from lower wages. And interestingly, the automaker that is most vulnerable to tariffs because of its operations in Mexico is Europe's biggest car maker, Volkswagen. And of course, Stellantis Tool, which owns Peugeot, is the second most exposed European car maker. Now, shares of both companies were down more than 4% in Monday trading.
All right, thank you so much, Ipona, for joining us and bringing us the latest on this. Moving on, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump will discuss the future of the Gaza ceasefire on Tuesday. The visit is a first by foreign leader to the White House since the US president's return to power. Netanyahu on Tuesday said that Israel will send a delegation to Doha this week for talks on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal. However, Trump has expressed caution, stating there are no guarantees the ceasefire will hold. We're heading for a short break, but still to come on DD India Live. At the second IIC Brookfield seminar, India's Jaishankar highlights overlooked issues of terrorism and stresses advancing the India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. Indian Army's Sri Shakti Corps successfully executes a live fire exercise, showcasing its battle readiness, rapid deployments and precision strike capabilities.
I'm on a quest to explore the history of Goa. A land steeped in diverse and intersecting cultures and traditions.
I think this is one of my favorite pieces of art in the city.
Here, influences from multiple faiths coalesce in beautiful ways. From religious sites to charming villages and vibrant streets. Watch postcards from Goa on National Geographic. Goa, an adventure paradise like none other. From lush forests to rugged hills, from pristine ocean beach stretches to stunning lakes, there is something to explore in every corner of the state. And some adventures are wilder than others. Watch postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
Welcome back after that short break. You're watching DD India Live. In eastern Congo, a fragile hope emerges with the announcement of ceasefire amid months of deadly fighting between rebel groups and government forces. But the situation remains volatile, with both civilian casualties and tensions rising.
The rebel alliance operating in eastern Congo, known as Congo River Alliance, including the M23 rebel group, has declared a ceasefire. It is set to begin on February 4th. The announcement came just as the region faces an escalating humanitarian crisis. As the ceasefire is declared, Goma, a city in the heart of the conflict zone, is reeling from the loss of life. Morgues are overflowing and the city's hospitals are struggling to keep up with the surge in casualties.
I fled the rebel bombardments because they had killed many people. I lived for 1 year in Zulu as a displaced person, but there too, the recent war made me flee to Kimashini. But there too, we fled after being attacked by looters who took everything from us until we arrived here at this school. We sleep on the ground with nothing.
Government forces cut off the internet and that made it very difficult to communicate. The water supply too was cut. It was so difficult to find out food like vegetables and flour. We just remained in our houses desperately.
The Congo government has accused Rwanda of backing the M23 rebels, allegations Rwanda denies. Congo's government has called for tougher measures to force Rwanda into diplomatic talks. In a bid to bring Rwanda to the negotiating table, Congo is pushing for international sanctions. The government hopes that increasing economic pressure will force Rwanda to hold its support for rebel groups, paving the way for a lasting peace.
The world or the international community cannot not react on what Rwanda is doing in the eastern part of DRC. They've been killing peacekeepers from United Nations. They killed soldiers from SADC. They are killing population, bombing hospital, etc. And all this was happening during the day. How come the international community cannot take a strong position, a strong decision, not only to condemn, but to stop what Rwanda is doing?
The United Nations, the European Union, and the United States have strongly condemned Rwanda's involvement in the conflict, calling for an immediate de-escalation and renewed peace efforts. Despite repeated international condemnation, tensions between the two nations remain high. As the region continues to remain on edge, the question remains, will this ceasefire hold or will the bloodshed return to upend the lives forever? For the people of Eastern Congo, the hope for peace seems as fragile as the ceasefire. With Aarti Rana, Anil Thomas, DD India.
Speaking at the second IIC Prukul annual seminar in New Delhi, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said that terrorism has been overlooked when convenient.
We, in India, have yet to see aggression on our territory vacated after so many decades. Equally, terrorism has been overlooked when convenient. In our own continent, international law has been disregarded with significant consequences. Even on a question like democracy and military rule, different standards have been applied to our neighbors in the East and our neighbor in the West. It is not my case that principles are dispensable or that we must be utterly into realpolitik. But the agenda can no longer be set by some, only to be observed by the rest. This applies to passing judgment on and interfering in the domestic politics of others as well.
Now, the Indian Army's Sri Shakti Corps successfully conducted a live fire exercise validating its battle readiness, rapid deployment and precision strike capabilities. The units were specifically preparing for battle in the high altitude mountains of Sikkim, showcasing their adaptability and readiness for diverse operational environments. Through coordinated firepower and precision engagement, the units demonstrated their preparedness for a variety of challenges, including those posed by high-altitude warfare. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from the country and the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download it right now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Deepika, and from all of us here in New Delhi, thank you so much for joining and watching DD India Live. Namaskar.